My name is Cynthia Brooks, and I am 42 years old. When Thomas Wallace came back from his retreat, he didn't ease into it. He didn't sit me down gently or circle the truth until I was ready. He stood in our kitchen, my kitchen technically, and said, "This trip made me realize I don't want you anymore. No emotion, no hesitation. The way someone comments on the weather when they're already thinking about what comes next." I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't ask him to explain himself. I just looked at him for a long moment and said, "All right." That was it. One word. Calm enough that it unsettled him. We had been together for 11 years. Never married, not because I didn't want to, but because he didn't believe in labels or paperwork or what he liked to call entanglement. He preferred things fluid, independent. I went along with it because I loved him and because I believed that commitment showed up in daily choices, not legal documents. We owned a house together, or rather I did. I bought it 8 years ago before he moved in. My name was on the deed. My credit secured the mortgage. My savings covered the down payment. He paid toward utilities and groceries, helped furnish the place, contributed in ways that felt shared at the time. But the house had always been mine. We discussed it openly, especially when friends got married or bought property together. He liked the arrangement, said it made things simpler if life ever went sideways. Life went sideways 3 weeks ago when Thomas left for a 10-day mindfulness retreat in another state. Yoga, journaling, silence, a group he'd met through his wellness center. I didn't think much of it. He'd been talking for months about needing space to reconnect with himself. Work had been brutal for both of us. I run a consulting firm. He manages a wellness center. We'd been exhausted orbiting each other more than meeting. I picked him up from the airport on a Tuesday night. He stared out the window the entire drive home. When I asked how the retreat was, he said it was transformative. When I asked what that meant, he didn't answer. I made dinner. Pasta, salad, nothing fancy. He barely touched it. Kept checking his phone like he was waiting for permission to say something. Finally, he looked up and said, "I need to talk to you." I put my fork down. I already knew. This trip made me realize I don't want you anymore. No build-up, no apology, just a statement of fact delivered like a conclusion he'd already processed alone. I sat there for a moment, then nodded. All right. He frowned. That's it. What do you want me to say? I asked. You've made a decision. I thought you'd be more upset. I'm upset, I said evenly. I'm just not going to perform it for you. That's when I saw it the flicker of disappointment, like he'd wanted tears, or anger, or chaos. Something he could point to later and say, "See, that's why I had to leave." "I'll start looking for a place," he said. "I just need a few weeks to figure things out." "Take your time," I replied. "I'm not kicking you out tomorrow." He studied me. "You're being very calm about this." "What's the alternative?" I asked. "Screaming. Throwing things." "We're adults. This is ending. Let's handle it like adults." He went upstairs. A few minutes later, I heard him on the phone, voice low and animated. I cleaned up dinner, loaded the dishwasher, sent a few emails I couldn't focus on, and eventually went to bed alone. I stared at the ceiling until nearly 3 in the morning, wondering when exactly he'd decided our life together was expendable. The next morning, he was already up, laptop open at the kitchen table, scrolling through apartment listings. "Morning," I said. "Morning." I poured 2 cups of coffee out of habit and slid one toward him. He took it without looking at me. "I found a few places," he said. "Going to schedule some viewings." "Okay." "Most of them want first month last month and a security deposit," he added. "It's going to be tight until my next paycheck." I didn't respond, just sipped my coffee. "I might need to borrow some money," he continued. "Just for the deposits. I'll pay you back." How much? I asked. "Maybe 5,000. I laughed before I could stop myself. "You're breaking up with me and asking me for $5,000 in the same conversation." "It's a loan," he snapped. "I just said I'd pay you back." "No," I said calmly. "You'll figure it out yourself." "That's petty." "That's reality," I replied. "You don't want me anymore. Part of that is not having access to my money." He slammed his laptop shut. "I've contributed to this household for years." "You've paid utilities and groceries," I said. "I've paid the mortgage, the taxes, the insurance, and every major repair. Don't rewrite history now." He stood, grabbed his coffee, and went back upstairs. The guest room door slammed hard enough to shake the frame. That afternoon, I called my lawyer. And that was when I realized this wasn't over. It was just beginning. By the next afternoon, the house had developed a strange rhythm. We moved around each other like strangers who shared a schedule but not a life. Doors closed softly. Footsteps paused to avoid crossing paths. Every sound felt amplified, as if the walls themselves were listening, keeping score. Thomas knocked on my office door around 2 in the afternoon. A polite knock. Careful. The kind of knock people use when they already know the answer might not go their way. "Can we talk?" he asked. "Sure," I said, swiveling my chair away from my screen. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him, then sat across from me. He looked composed, but I recognized the tension in his jaw. This wasn't about emotions. This was logistics. When feelings fail, logistics always follow. "I've been thinking about the practical stuff," he began. "The apartments I'm looking at all require proof of income references, credit checks, standard things." "Okay." "The issue is, my credit isn't great. I had some problems a few years ago with a credit card. It's mostly resolved, but my score hasn't fully recovered." I leaned back slightly. I could already see where this was headed, and the fact that he was easing into it only confirmed it. "And most landlords," he continued, "want a cosigner if your credit is below a certain threshold." "No," I said before he could finish. He blinked. "I haven't even asked yet." "You're about to ask me to cosign your lease," I replied. "The answer is no." "I need help, Cynthia," he said, his voice tightening. "I can't get approved without one." "Then find someone else, a family member, a friend. My parents are retired. They don't qualify. My friends either don't make enough or won't do it." "Then find a different apartment," I said. "Find a roommate situation. Something that doesn't require a cosigner. Those options are either unsafe or too far from my work." "Then there's still options," I replied. "They're just not the ones you want." He stared at me incredulous. "You're really going to make this difficult?" "I'm not making anything difficult," I said calmly. "You decided to leave. You decided you don't want me anymore. Those were your words. You don't get to leave and expect me to remain responsible for your housing. I thought we could be adults about this." "We are being adults," I said. "Adults understand that decisions have consequences." He stood abruptly and left the office. For the next hour, I heard him making phone calls. His parents, his sister, friends. Each call ended with the same sharp exhale of frustration, his voice rising just enough for me to catch fragments, impossible, unfair. I don't know what else to do. Later that evening, he came back into my office, shoulders slumped. "I talked to my parents," he said. "They can help with deposit money, but they can't cosign. Their accountant advised against it." "Okay," I said. "That's all you have to say." "What would you like me to say?" I asked. "I already told you I'm not cosigning." "I need to move out," he said. "I can't stay here indefinitely." "I didn't say you could," I replied. "I said take your time. That doesn't mean months. It means a reasonable amount of time." "How long is reasonable?" "End of the month," I said. 3 weeks. His face fell. "That's not enough time." "It's plenty of time," I said evenly. "If you're actually looking at realistic options." "And what if I can't find a place by then?" "Then you'll need a backup plan," I said. "A hotel. A friend's couch. Storage for your things. Whatever it takes." "You're being cruel." "I'm being practical." "You don't have to do this," he said. "You're choosing to." "No," I replied. "You ended this relationship. You don't get to dictate how I handle my property afterward." He turned away, jaw clenched, and left the room without another word. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table long after the house had gone quiet. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even hurt in the way people expect. What I felt was something colder, clearer. He hadn't asked for love back. He hadn't asked to fix us. He'd asked for access. And that told me everything I needed to know. A week passed, and the house began to feel like a waiting room, quiet, tense, suspended between what had been and what was coming. Thomas toured apartment after apartment. I stopped keeping track after the 10th listing he mentioned over dinner we no longer shared. Every place fell apart the same way. Income thresholds he didn't meet, credit checks that stalled the process, cosigners required. Each rejection chipped away at the confidence he'd carried back from that retreat, the confidence that had fueled his certainty when he told me he didn't want me anymore. He started coming home later. I didn't ask where he'd been. I didn't need to. Whatever he was searching for wasn't something I could give him anymore, even if I wanted to. One night, close to 11, he stood in the doorway of my office while I was finishing up work. He looked exhausted. Not performatively tired, not dramatic, just worn down in a way that suggested reality had finally caught up with him. "I need to ask you something," he said, "and I need you to actually consider it." "Go ahead," I replied. "What if I stayed here for a few more months," he asked. "Paid you rent. We'd be roommates. Basically a landlord-tenant situation. It would give me time to improve my credit, save more money, find something decent." "No," I said. "Why not?" he demanded. "Because you don't want me," I replied. "You made that very clear. It would be temporary." "It would be torture," I said, "for both of us." "You're not even willing to consider it." "I've considered it," I said. "The answer is still no." That's when he started crying. Not the kind of tears meant to manipulate, not the carefully timed cracks in the voice. These were real, messy, the kind that come when every fallback plan collapses at once. "I don't know what to do," he said. "Every option is terrible. The places I can afford without a cosigner are dangerous or falling apart. The places that are safe require things I can't provide. I'm stuck." "You should have thought about this before you ended things," I said quietly. "I made a mistake," he said. I looked up. "What?" "I made a mistake," he repeated. "The retreat, the whole thing. I got caught up in this idea of freedom, independence, finding myself. I thought I wanted out, but now I'm realizing I can't even afford to leave." The words settled between us like dust. "So you don't actually want me," I said. "You just need me." "That's not fair," he snapped. "It's accurate," I replied. "Can we try to work this out?" he asked. "Go to counseling, something." "No." "Why not?" "Because when you came back from your retreat, I said you didn't want counseling. You didn't want to talk. You wanted out. You said it without hesitation, without emotion. You'd already decided." "People make mistakes," he argued. "People say things they don't mean." "You meant it," I said. "You're just realizing now that leaving is harder than you thought." He stood abruptly and left the room. Minutes later, I heard him on the phone in the guest room again, louder this time. I caught words through the wall, impossible, controlling, trapped. I sat at my desk long after the call ended, staring at the closed door. This wasn't about love anymore. It was about consequences, and he was finally starting to feel them. The deadline crept closer with the quiet inevitability of a tide you can see but can't stop. 2 days, 48 hours. Thomas still didn't have a place. He paced more, slept less. Every conversation he had sounded like a negotiation that kept failing before it even reached the terms. I watched him from a distance, not with satisfaction, not with cruelty, but with a growing certainty that this outcome had been set the moment he decided freedom meant walking away without a plan. The night before the end-of-month deadline, he knocked on my bedroom door. I was sitting on the bed reading when the knock came, hesitant, careful, like someone approaching an animal they weren't sure would bite. "We need to talk," he said, already opening the door. "We've talked plenty," I replied. "Tomorrow's the deadline." He stepped inside anyway. "I have nowhere to go." "That's unfortunate." His face tightened. "You're really going to make me homeless." "I'm not making you anything," I said calmly. "I'm enforcing a boundary. You have options." "Moving back with my parents isn't an option," he shot back. "They live 4 hours away. I'd have to quit my job. Start over." "You wanted independence," I reminded him. "You wanted to not be entangled with me. This is what that looks like." "I was wrong," he said, his voice breaking. "I told you I was wrong." "You were wrong about being able to afford independence," I said, "not about wanting it." "That's not true." "It is," I replied. "You don't want me back. You want your comfortable life back. The house, the stability, the safety net." "That's a horrible thing to say." "It's an honest one," I said. "Something you avoided on that retreat." He sat on the edge of the bed, hands clasped together like he was praying to a god that had already turned away. "What if I signed something?" he asked suddenly. "A lease agreement, market rate rent, a legal landlord-tenant relationship, everything official." "No." "Why not?" His voice cracked. "You'd be getting income from a room that would otherwise sit empty." "Because I don't want you here," I said quietly. "You don't want me. I don't want to live with someone who looked me in the eye and said they didn't want me anymore." "You're punishing me." "I'm protecting myself." He stood, breathing hard, anger and panic colliding in his expression. "Fine. I'll take the apartment I looked at last week, the one in the sketchy neighborhood, the one with broken locks and mold. At least I'll be out of your hair." "Don't try to guilt me," I said. "You have other options. You're choosing not to take them. Moving 4 hours away is a complete life reset." "Then maybe," I said evenly, "you should have thought about that before you came back from your retreat and decided to blow up our life together." He stormed out of the room and slammed the door. Moments later, I heard drawers opening, zippers scraping, the sound of someone packing, not with intention, but with desperation. I lay back against the headboard and stared at the ceiling. Regret had finally arrived. It just came too late to matter. Morning came without ceremony. No dramatic confrontation, no final argument. Just the quiet understanding that the line I had drawn was about to be crossed one way or another. Thomas was already awake when I came downstairs. Boxes were stacked near the front door, half-filled, careless, like he still hadn't fully accepted that this was actually happening. His car was backed into the driveway trunk, open, waiting. We moved around each other in silence at first. I poured coffee. He taped a box shut. The house felt hollow, stripped of its old rhythm, as if it had already adjusted to his absence before he had. Around mid-morning, he finally spoke. "My parents are coming this afternoon," he said. "They'll help me load the rest. I'll drive back with them tonight. I nodded. Okay. That's it, he asked, a trace of disbelief creeping back into his voice. What else is there to say? He set the tape gun down harder than necessary. I really didn't think you'd go through with this. That's the problem, I replied. You didn't think. His parents arrived just after noon. Polite, awkward. His mother hugged me, like this was something unfortunate that had happened to both of us, rather than a decision her son had made on his own. His father avoided my eyes, focused on carrying boxes, as if manual labor might excuse the silence. I helped carry things out, not because I owed him anything, but because this house and the life I'd built inside it didn't need bitterness embedded in the walls. We spoke only when necessary. Measurements, storage questions, logistics stripped of emotion. When the last box was loaded, Thomas stood by his car keys in hand. This isn't how I wanted this to go, he said. I studied him for a moment. How did you want it to go? He hesitated. I don't know, just not like this. You wanted to leave without consequences, I said quietly. That's not how life works. He nodded, eyes downcast. I know that now. Do you? I asked. He didn't answer. He got into his car, closed the door, and drove away. I watched until he turned the corner, then went back inside and closed the door behind me. The house was silent. Not empty, just honest. Stop. Part 6. Aftermath. In the weeks that followed, the silence settled into something livable. I walked through the rooms, noticing what was gone, the empty shelf in the bathroom, the cleared closet space, the missing photos from the hallway, and what remained. Stability, ownership, peace. A few weeks later, I received an email from Thomas. He'd settled in at his parents' house, found a remote position doing wellness coaching. Said he finally understood why I hadn't helped him. Said he needed to face the full weight of his decision. Said he hoped one day we could talk without anger. I didn't respond. A month after that, his sister reached out, told me he was struggling, depressed, regretful, asked if I'd be willing to talk to him. When I said no, she called me heartless. I blocked her number. 2 months later, I started dating someone new. A man I met through a friend. He had his own home, his own career, his own stability. He didn't need me to function, but he chose to be with me anyway. Thomas found out through mutual friends. He sent a long text about how quickly I'd moved on, how callous I was, how he'd wasted 11 years on someone who could replace him so easily. I blocked him too. Here's the truth about that night when he came back from his retreat and told me he didn't want me anymore. He meant it. In that moment, he believed he wanted freedom, independence, detachment. What he didn't understand was that he'd built his life on my foundation, that not wanting me meant not having access to everything that came with me. And when he finally realized that when the safety net disappeared, he expected me to save him, I chose not to. People called it cruel, called it revenge, called it heartless. I call it self-respect. I'm 42 years old. I own my house. I have my career. I have my dignity. And I have someone in my life now who sees my value and doesn't take it for granted. Thomas got exactly what he asked for. Complete independence, complete separation, no safety net. Turns out it's a lot lonelier than he imagined.